Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of Político with Juan Díaz. I am your host, Juan Díaz, and today I am talking to Leif. Leif, you are Captain Leif Iron-leg, right?
Yeah, ahoy, matey. Captain Leif Iron-leg here.
So let me just ask you to begin. Can you talk to me a little bit about you, Captain Leif? What you do? What's everything about you, or whatever you want to share about you?
Most certainly. I'm a queer, pagan, anti-fascist educator. I'm a trans man. I've been living my best life as a man for almost a decade now. I kind of got my start actually in opera and early music back when I was in high school and pursuing my college degree. I got a degree in classical music performance and early music, that is to say, like music history, Renaissance, Middle Ages. I did a really weird niche capstone thesis project about how the Black Death changed religious and secular music throughout Europe. And of course, predictably did absolutely nothing with that, kind of job hopped and basically just did as much career work as I needed to in order to make my anti-fascism happen. Anti-fascism is my passion and my purpose. And I've been a member of a lot of different leftist organizations, been involved in a lot of different niche hobbies. I always come back around to anti-fascism, though.
Yeah, which is the reason why we're here today. So let me, with that, jump to my first question, which it is: can you define, explain anti-fascism? People who might not be familiar with this, they don't know exactly what anti-fascism is. You hear the word fascism and anti-fascism like a lot around, but we don't know. I mean, when I say we, I mean people. I know what it is, but people don't know exactly what anti-fascism may be, or where it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. So anti-fascism is about 110-year-old political tradition. It started in Italy, as did fascism. And when I answer this question, I like to define fascism because there are a lot of really silly ideas in our society about what fascism actually is. Fascism is a pseudo-revolutionary, ultra-nationalist ideology which seeks to shore up the defenses of a capitalist state in response to a crisis, usually some kind of economic or political crisis. It promises a return to the utopian glory of a mythologized and idealized past, the perceived loss of which is understood to have been caused by dangerous, degrading outside forces. So fascism uses class collaboration to enact a project of violence and terror that will allegedly restore the utopian glory of the state or of the nation. It mobilizes the most reactionary segments of the working class in partnership with the ruling class of the state, and thereby reinforces the state's defenses and upholds the capitalist system and all of its repressive hierarchies. So the fascist movement centers the nation, frames the nation as the center of an existential struggle against malevolent outside forces. And those forces are almost always a scapegoated other, be it queer people or Jewish people. The fascist state promises that by persecuting this other and by restoring the nation, we're going to make everything good again. Anti-fascism, then, is basically the political position that ain't going to fly. It's an illiberal, no-tolerance approach to addressing the problem of fascist movements as they emerge in a society. Literally any action or organizing that directly opposes fascism without relying on intervention by the state is anti-fascism. And of course, when they talk about, quote, Antifa on the news, they're usually making it out like there's some central organization and they're showing a bunch of protesters wearing black, engaging in fights with police or with far-right groups. And while I've certainly gone toe-to-toe with police and far-right groups, and I've certainly turned out clad all in black, that's just a tiny little fraction of what anti-fascism is. There's no central organization. anybody can put a group of people together and call themselves anti-fascist. Any individual can be anti-fascist.
Yeah, and I know, like, with the Antifa thing, I'm pretty sure I have seen you in it. There is this website called the Antifa Watch.
Yeah.
I made it to it myself. I have 3 different profiles because every single one of them has something new. They have one with my middle name, one with my first name, first last name, and then one with my full name.
They didn't consolidate them all in one?
No, they're all in 3 different profiles. One of them nicknamed me the Antifa protester who dresses up, because I regularly go to protest with like my regular like clothes when I'm outside of the house. Dress up shirt. I dress up in black every day. I literally had to toe black, like dress every day. It's my signature color, I guess. I'm like a cartoon character. I just change my ties. But to every protest, I also wear a black tie.
Right.
So there's the one from before. Then there is Machete Boy, because I pull a machete on one the Cleveland agitators, like fascists, who it's now dead.
Oh, that's metal.
So yeah,
Is he dead because you chopped him with your machete?
No, that would have been hilarious. No, he died of cancer in jail, to my knowledge, but I don't know exactly how that one 100% is true or not. That's what I heard. So, and the third one is the Wadsworth, Ohio one, which is the rainbow one, which is me with the rainbow suit.
That's kind of wild that they gave you 3 entries. Should we explain Antifa Watch for your listeners? I found that a lot of people are not familiar with it.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead, like I can explain part of it, but I'm not 100% more familiar with it. I think you might be more familiar than me.
Yeah, it's basically a shit list website. It's it kind of rides the line of what is legally considered doxing. So they're not technically a doxing website because they don't give out certain information that isn't public, such as addresses, but it's basically a doxing website without going all the way to technically be doxing. It was started in 2020 in response to basically in response to the BLM protests that kicked off in May and June. I'm kind of amazed that I didn't end up on there after my arrest in 2020, but at any rate, a bunch of right-wingers purchased this domain, Antifa Watch, and they just started keeping a record of anybody they could get info on who was arrested at a BLM protest, who has self-identified publicly as anti-fascist. If you've been arrested at an anti-fascist thing, or you've been arrested at a BLM thing, or you have been charged with any anti-fascist related activity that the state considers criminal, you're likely to end up on Antifa Watch. And when I got arrested pertaining to this issue with Wadsworth, that was when they threw my info up there, along with my dead name and some pretty wild accusations. But the whole goal of it is it's twofold. It's to incite stochastic violence against the people who are listed, and also to kind of shame and frighten people into silence. So when I got out of jail from this really brief arrest, and one of my friends told me that I was up on this website, I kind of thought to myself, oh, they're expecting me to hide and be scared now that they've done this. Okay, challenge accepted. I'm going to be so loud, they're going to regret ever messing with me.
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. The first time I made it was like right in 2020. Like I was right on the Antifa side, so it's freaking hilarious. I made it to there like right after the protest, and I wouldn't be surprised if they had like photos of like 12-year-old me probably protesting in Rochester, New York for Black Lives Matter. I wouldn't doubt that they have photos of me like all that and call me like an Antifa since back then, like way back.
They'll archive anything they can that's legal to archive. They've got a whole slew of photos of me in black bloc at various events, and even claiming that I'm somebody who hurts kids, even through their fascist lens, they kind of make me sound badass. Like it really reads more like a subversive resume than a dox.
Yeah, it's close to not really close to it, but it's kind of like, I don't know if you ever heard of the Canary Project. So it's like
Yeah,
a website that targets like Palestinians or like anti-Israel like people and kind of puts them. So it's kind of
yeah.
close. But the only thing is then the Canary Project goes a little like too in depth into the person, where Antifa just throws like the Antifa Watch just throws like main info that you can find anywhere in the internet and some like records from court. But the other ones go like the Canary Project goes onto like where you work at and
Mhm.
like your job's number, your boss's like name
Yeah,
kind
the
of thing.
Canary mission goes really over the top, and they're a lot better organized and more professional. Antifa Watch will basically just publish whatever gets submitted. They don't fact check it or anything. I don't think they've, like, last I checked, they actually have my Instagram handle spelled wrong.
Yeah, I think they have like I have a couple of Instagrams accounts. So I'm assuming they have like probably one or the other, but yeah, that's the Antifa Watch. And like we both made it during the Wadsworth like situation. I also made it to theirs as the last record, and they have of me. They have great photos of me. That's actually where I got all the photos that I posted online. So
Yeah, me
funny
too.
story.
I got a ton of the photos that I use on my personal website, on my socials. A ton of them are photos that the Fash took of me. Like, okay,
I know
I'll
that
take
like
some
this
free
people need
photography.
to be photographers.
Well, one of them is a professional photographer, to my understanding.
Yeah,
One
like
of the guys who helps run it.
they just need to like stop protesting like this little bullshit that they have going on and become photographers. I think they'll be good at it. So let me ask you with that. Let's jump in a little bit and talk about Wadsworth for a little bit here. You have a group of people that have been talking about you since the drag story hour that happened at Wadsworth, Ohio. The situation, there's been some reoccurrences, like social media, emails, etc., and all that stuff. So let me ask you, how do you end up defending drag story hours, drag shows, and what like how did you end up at the one in Wadsworth, Ohio specifically?
That's a great question. I was asking that myself all damn day. No, in all seriousness, I started doing anti-fascism kind of as a personal study right around 2017 when I saw the shit that went down in Charlottesville with that Unite the Right protest. I became really passionately interested in trying to learn everything I could about anti-fascism and the history of anti-fascism, as well as left politics in general, because I noticed reviewing a lot of the news coverage from that day, these people clad in black with like baseball bats and sticks and chains and stuff were physically intervening in situations where these fascist gangs were trying to beat up clergy, trying to beat up passersby, in particular targeting minorities. And I was like, I've got to find out more about these people. I've got to learn more about this. And at that time, I was under the impression that there was some kind of organization that needed to come tap me and initiate me or whatever. So the more I learned, the more I realized that was not the case, and that really those people just choose to do that and they go out and do that. So I started training and studying to do that. And then right around 2020, I was finally coming into my own and feeling like I was ready to hit the ground. And sure enough, the BLM protests kicked off in May and June of 2020. I got laid off from a relatively comfortable office job with a pretty decent severance and a non-disparagement agreement. But anyway, I had enough money to basically just dive into these protests for a hot second and do nothing else. And we did a lot of defending protesters from police, a lot of defending protesters from right-wing gangs, in particular the Boogaloos. They've kind of dissolved and filtered into other organizations, but the Boogaloos and the Proud Boys were both very prominent in terms of who was opposing the protests in 2020. So I kind of cut my teeth on that. And I got arrested in 2020 when an out-of-control cop came at me. I think the video of it is still up on Reddit if you search. I think it's like Columbus medic dragged in street by police. I don't know why they thought I was a medic. They just assumed that. I think maybe because I was trying to help somebody when they came at me. But either way, once I was arrested and met some people inside the jail, spent 3 days kind of cooling off and making new friends on the inside, it really solidified my politics, and not just my commitment to my anti-fascism, but to leftist politics and subversive politics in general. And from that point on, I basically just adopted the old slogan of Anti-Racist Action, which was, where we go, they go. And pretty much anytime I heard about fascist activity, I would try to do something to mess it up, which usually ended up in me and whoever I could get to join me, dressing up all in black and hitting the ground running. And then that all kind of came to a head in Columbus in December of 2023. No, excuse me, December of 2022. Yeah, it was the Christmas time of 22 when the Proud Boys managed to get a drag story hour shut down in Columbus. It was in a really progressive neighborhood called Clintonville. It was being held at a Unitarian church. And the church got totally freaked out and canceled the whole event. And the Proud Boys, of course, still came into town, and they had Patriot Front in tow. They had a bunch of street preachers. They had that crusty crusader who shows up to everything. They had pretty much everybody who was at Wadsworth showed up in Columbus, and there was no drag show to attack. They succeeded in getting it shut down. So they just basically threw a little fascist party in the street for a few hours, made the neighborhood living hell for everybody who was just trying to go about their business. And for the first time, I got to see some really exciting organic anti-fascism. And what I mean by that is just people in the neighborhood looking out their windows and going, what the fuck is going on? Why are there a bunch of Proud Boys and other white supremacists throwing a party in the street? I'm going to go yell at them. So then these organic anti-fascists and the formal anti-fascists like myself and my friends at the time, we just kind of merged, and were just enough people to, I don't want to say foil their plans, because their plan was basically just to have a party in the street, and they did. But we at least managed to mobilize enough people that they didn't have full control of the day. So then moving forward from there, this particular group, this particular alliance of anti-queer orgs was on my radar. Then, me and my friends were keeping track of drag shows, drag story times, things like that were being threatened. And that's how Wadsworth came up. We saw coverage of the Wadsworth situation in, I think it was the Buckeye Flame and the Akron Beacon Journal. Both outlets were reporting on the fact that there was this drag story time that was receiving threats, that had to change venues, and that the organizer, Aaron Reed, I know now, but the organizer was really digging his heels in and refusing to be intimidated. And the situation just kept escalating. The Parasol Patrol got involved. They were flying in from, like, I think it was Colorado, some of them were coming out from. It sounded like it was turning into a really huge thing. And we decided we needed to be there to help. We had direct experience with a lot of the individuals and organizations. And like I said earlier, where we go, they go.
Absolutely. And this it's kind of like our stories are kind of like they collate, like, because pretty much that's how I heard about Wadsworth. Then I had Aaron contact someone that I knew, and that person contacted me, and then I got involved. Constantly, and that person now, I'm pretty sure, was on the opposite side. He was a former, or he claims he was a former book boy. They're now called the Fiesta Boys, I think, or whatever racist
was
name.
That Zach?
That was Zach. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever they want to call their little group. So, and all these groups were there. I never expected, in mid 2023, I never expected to see Nazis, KKKs, like whatever they call themselves, patriots, but they're really not. They're just a bunch of fascists. And they're all literally the same, just in one area. I was like, holy shit, I never expected to see this. And I don't know if you've ever seen, I'm really huge with comics and superheroes and stuff. There's this comic called Crisis on Earth X, which is Earth X is pretty much Nazi populated, like they win World War II and whatever. And they, like, the Nazis pretty much take over. And there is the Ray, which is pretty much a freedom fighter. first comic was Freedom Fighters and the Ray,
Mhm.
and they pretty much just fight. And I was like, shit, this is gonna be like one of those scenes. When I arrived there and I see like these people arrive, I'm like, fuck, like everybody's gonna start. I got crazy, and then the Nazis arrive, which is like, holy shit! Like I never thought I would see swastikas and Heil Hitler people
Mhm.
like in 2023. I was like, I heard of neo-Nazis, never thought I would see them in person. I mean, and nevertheless, Ohio, it's in between liberal and like, you know, a little bit of a like conservative, but
It's interesting you should mention that, because like when you look at the history of fascism, I mean, first I want to point out that patriotism and fascism go hand in hand. It always centers the nation. I want to quote Mussolini here, literally the OG fascist. He said, oh shoot, where did I put that quote? Basically, he said, the myth of the nation is the center of this project. Everything else is subservient to it. It is all about centering the nation, making a victim narrative for the nation, and working people up in their patriotism, making them want to make America great again, making them want to make Germany great again, make Italy great again.
exactly. And
And
you
then
know,
in reference to Ohio in particular, Ohio is the perfect place for fascists to come in and recruit and organize, and it has become the fascist organizing hub of the Midwest. Like Proud Boys, Patriot Front, neo-Nazis from all the other Midwest states and from New York and Pennsylvania all come and meet in Ohio, because Ohio is in this really weird situation where there used to be a lot of prosperity here. We used to have a ton of factory jobs, ton of steelwork jobs, car and tire related jobs, really great fucking jobs where you could come out of high school, get a really decent salary, decent living, get a station wagon and a ranch house, and have your wife and 2.5 kids or whatever. All of that has fallen away. We're in a situation now where those jobs have either gone overseas or the unions have been busted, and people want an explanation. They want somebody to blame, because most Americans don't have a solid class analysis to help them understand this is the ruling class that's doing this to you. This is the capitalist class that is taking away your jobs, taking away your unions, and making you suffer. People don't have that analysis, so they become really vulnerable to ideas like, it's actually the globalists who are doing this to you. It's the queers who are doing this to you. We have a scapegoat for you to blame for the degradation of the nation. You just have to help us go after that scapegoat.
that is exactly what they do. They have to find someone to blame for it, and they just look for the first person. And you know, like this is, you know, going back to Westworld, this is exactly what happened. They were looking for someone to blame, and they just figured out, and we were the people. So you know, we have heard the story from the media. The media has their own way to twist mainstream media to twist some things and make it to their advantage. Immediately the UK, my friends in the UK were texting me and asking me like, "You got arrested," because the title of their like article was 3 protesters arrested, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen, you know, there was court cases, there was things happening. So let me ask you, what is your side of the story from that situation? Like things that you have heard. I have heard from other people, the things that have happened. We have seen it in the podcast. We have heard from it in the podcast myself. As I mentioned in the past, there's emails, there's social media. I mean, some of these fascist people are online and their TikToks talking shit about this and looking at their way, how they're like Supermaning the cape, pretty much acting like they're the big heroes when they were the ones that were wrong. So what's your side of the story of that situation?
I'm so glad you asked. Now, I have to be really careful, because some of the individuals who I allege to be fascists, I have to be really careful how I word this. Some of these individuals who I allege to be fascists have proven to be very quick to make litigious threats. So I'm going to use aliases for significant individuals, and I'm sure your regular viewers and people who are familiar with the whole case can kind of connect the dots and figure out who's who. But I'll be using aliases of my own design for the key players in this. So basically, me and my squad arrived in Wadsworth. We had generally a pretty good idea of what we were going to be dealing with. We knew there were going to be Proud Boys from all over the place. We knew they were bringing people in from out of state. Anytime the Proud Boys are there, we know that Patriot Front is probably going to show up, always late, always marching in formation, always getting called feds by the Proud Boys. We had a general idea of what it was going to be like. But we got there, and the Proud Boys were posted up in pretty much every parking lot already. They were all over this park, like flies on rotten meat, right? And they had a whole bunch of other groups with them, the Cleveland Street Preachers Collective, Anti-Groomer Action, Project 171. That's one of many fronts organized by an individual named Don Moody, who's been associated with Bikers for Trump and who tried to organize a failed event this past J6. Of course, Patriot Front showed up late. The neo-Nazi group calling themselves Blood Tribe showed up late. One of the first things that happened was a bunch of the volunteers saw a whole group of Proud Boys coming over the hill. They got spooked and they peaced out. They just headed home. So already the anti-fascists were outnumbered at this event, but then that compounded the issue. So that left me one of the only people in true Black Bloc. And some of these people who pieced out were actually supposed to be armed like I was. So, and I'm sure I'll be sending you some photos, but, I was in full kit, full Black Bloc, full face mask, body armor, gun. I had my knife on me to scrape their little stickers. I had a baton. I had the whole kit. I basically looked like a ninja, right? And everybody else who was supposed to be like that with me went
I just wanted to jump in really quick and say, like, kind of, if you look back at like my first arrest, kind of like how I was. I had a trench coat, but I had like the police started like searching and they pulled things out and they were like, what the fuck? Like, I had so many things on me. I was an arsenal pretty much that one protest, but kind of like you were ready for anything that happened.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to be ready for any contingency. In my opinion, I ended up having exactly what I needed. Anyway, the event kicked off, and it was basically just a lady playing the guitar and singing to kids in a gazebo. And some volunteers surrounded the gazebo to try to create like a visual barrier so the kids and the performer could do their thing. And then me and some of the other folks who were better equipped and more experienced, like the Parasol Patrol folks, we took up the responsibility of trying to move people in and out. Now, there was supposed to be a police barricade keeping the protesters and the event attendees apart. The police removed that barricade willingly. They actively enabled the mixing of these two groups, which I'm sure was by design. So these various fascists, the Proud Boys and the street preachers in particular, started harassing people as we were moving them back and forth, trying to get people in from the parking lot over to the gazebo and out of the gazebo back to the parking lot. And they're really good at just kind of towing the line of legality. And of course, the police don't intervene because cops always side with fascists. Historically and presently, the cops are always on the side of the fascists. So the cops are just standing around and watching while
and
the
I also wanted, to add, when you say, sorry to interrupt you real quick, when you say the cops, This is not just one department. This is, you have Medina County Sheriff, you have Medina Police, you have Wadsworth Police, and that was Berea, I believe, or was it Berea? No, Brunswick. Sorry, Brunswick PD.
Yeah, they had State Highway Patrol. They had
State Highway Patrol. You had over 5 different departments. You had like over 5 different departments.
They had Columbus.
They had tactical gear. They had like patrols ready to this event, and they unsuccessfully were not able to do anything. I mean, they didn't even protect the people that they were there too, because the organizer asked the police to be there for their protection.
They were able. They were able. They just chose not to.
Exactly. So they were able to do it. They just refused to do it because they're never going to be on our side.
Right. The police as a whole, historically speaking, always side with fascists. And when fascists take control of the mechanisms of the state, this is not an opinion, this is how the history has always shaken out. The so-called good cops either quit or get the wall. That is how it goes. So we saw firsthand that the police, at worst, were enabling and actively encouraging the fascists. At best, they were just hands off. There were even plainclothes counter-terror agents from Columbus Police Counterterrorism Task Force there. One of them tailed me out of town thinking he was being all stealth. Anyway, some of these fascists in particular were very confrontational. There was one major player who I'm going to call coveralls because he was running around in khaki coveralls that day. It was a real cold day. He was really, really fixated on his religious fanaticism. He was calling for Yeshua and Jehovah. His pronunciations, not mine. He was calling for his deities to smite us and, you know, to cast us into a lake of fire or some nonsense. At one point, he followed me and a guy I was escorting to his car for like 15 minutes, just screaming his religious nonsense. He also had his child there, who he armed. This is a fact that was acknowledged by the court. He armed his child and was basically inciting his kid to go start fights with adults. The kid was 12 years old at the time. It was the only time I have seen a child that young brought to an event like that. Most of the fash who come to shit like this, it's a boys' club. But this dude brought his wife and kid. It was a whole family affair. So he was very fixated on my escort groups.
That was family day for them. That was their like little family day, you know, get together and let's have some family quality time.
Yeah, instead of going to the you know, to the a normal park or a movie or something like normal people, they came and did this. Then another major player was an individual that I believe was a Proud Boy. If not now, then at least at the time. I'm going to call him Proud Baby because he had kind of a cute, chubby baby face. And he was just screaming into his megaphone the whole day, getting up into people's faces, trying to
got on my face
incite.
like 3 times and trying to assault me. So I know who you're talking about already. I didn't have an idea, but now I definitely know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I can show you a photo later, but I think you know the one. He was giving straight up threats. He told me to hang myself a few times. He called for violence in a great many number of ways. I had a feeling he was going to instigate some stuff, and I turned out to be right. Another major player in the whole affair turned out to be the individual I'm going to call Krusty the Crusader. He was the only person there dressed as a crusader. He identifies as a crusader, which, you know, that's fine. I think that that is a sincere expression of his inner self, by which I mean I think he sincerely wants to sack cities in the Islamic world and commit all of the atrocities of the Crusades all over again. That is my personal belief about what his shtick is. I call him Krusty because the dude smells like he died in the last crusade and has been decomposing since 1069 CE and then got resurrected by a necromancer and dragged his ass out to a drag show. And he doesn't even oil his armor to keep it in good condition. Like his chainmail is all rusty. I think Krusty is a great name for the crusader. So these three are trying to start shit all day. At a couple of points, actually, Krusty straight up came up to me and was like, I've seen you at things. You look like a worthy opponent. You look like a man who's skilled in the ways of violence. We should spar. And of course, I'm like, yeah, I'm busy. I'm trying to do very important unpaid work over here. And this guy is like 6 feet tall and obstructing my view. And he got really butthurt when I was just like, no, get out of my face. This all came to a head when, to kind of bring it all back home to the point, one escort group in particular was extremely vulnerable. We had a couple of parents and a whole bunch of kids. The youngest of the kids belonged to these parents. There were also some preteens who appeared to be there of their own volition. One of the parents was epileptic. And as some of our listeners already know, I'm sure, for some folks, epileptic seizures can be induced by stress, by panic. So, of course, it's causing panic for these folks that these fascists are pressing into our escort group, trying to start shit. One of the mothers later told me that she really truly believed these fascists were trying to kidnap her kids.
I'm gonna jump in there really quick for you. They only weren't trying. They actually took the step to almost, one of them grabbed one of her daughters. So I do know the mother. I actually kept in contact with her because I was the one who brought her inside of the barricade, and then actually had an argument with the police officers about getting an ambulance in there, and they were refusing to for her.
Yeah, those police were worse than useless. And
yes,
they were the mom was really nice. She actually
she was amazing person, and both of her daughters. We're talking about little girls. I have to grab them both and run with them inside. Like, I don't know where I got the strength to grab two kids.
They were
probably like little, around like 4 or 3 years old, but still like, and
like
they try to rip her off her hands. I know the person who did it because I did put a report, and the police did nothing. They took the baby off her hands. It's awful. Like, the fact is, and she had a couple attacks, like epileptic attacks, like at the time, and like almost got a seizure too.
Yeah, she experienced a seizure. The evidence, one of the pieces of evidence that the police didn't destroy, I'll get to that soon enough, but one of the pieces of evidence that was preserved was a security camera clip from the gazebo that was pointed right at our escort party, and you can see her dog alert. You can see her go down on the ground. She had a seizure right there. So our escort party had to stop. The seizure very clearly was triggered by the fact that these fucking fascists were attacking us. So the escort party stops. All we can really do is like make a wedge formation around these folks and try to protect them. And fascists, of course, they always want to attack the weak. They always want easy fights they know they can win. So Proud Baby came in, stuck his megaphone in my face, tried to hit me in the face. I block him with my baton, right? He's coming at me like this. I block him. Then he picks up the megaphone and just brings it right down on my head. I'm seeing stars. I wasn't wearing my helmet like a dumbass. I should have been wearing my helmet. But anyway, I grabbed my mace and I sprayed the motherfucker right in the eyes and the mouth. So Proud Baby got a really refreshing drink of capsaicin. And, you know, he starts crying and vomiting all over his beard. And one of the other Proud Boys is rushing him over somewhere else. Krusty the Crusader was also rushing in, trying to get in on the action when he realized there was a scuffle. And he got caught in the cloud, kind of the blowback.
If you look at the videos from News to Share, you can actually hear me yelling at him, like, you got what you deserve because you got on the way when you weren't supposed to be there. So you hear me actually yelling at him too, telling him.
Yeah, both Status Coup and News to Share got great footage of him just like spluttering and pouring water on his eyes and being like, oh my God, I've never been maced before. Oh my God. Oh, he was crying.
There's videos of Proud Baby crying too. So I think it was amazing.
The evidence photos of Proud Baby, he still has like flecks of his own vomit all up in his beard. He really fucked around and found out, man. I don't know much about him, but you know, I do allege that he was probably a member of the Proud Boys. I have not seen him at anything since. That's all I know about that. But so at that point, Coveralls is coming in and threatening people again. And Coveralls started alleging that his 12-year-old had been maced. So the 12-year-old is just standing there. He's pocket checking the weapon that his dad gave him. The dad, Coveralls, is waving a pepper blaster that is indistinguishable from a pistol in the heat of the moment. Negligent design, in my opinion. But they start yelling at the police, oh, that little Antifa maced my son. You better arrest him. I'm standing my ground, telling the police, you need to get some EMS in here right now. The police actually deleted the body cam footage of me sticking around and making sure this person got medical attention. The police deleted the body cam footage of the incident itself, which is actually a Brady violation and should have gotten my whole case thrown out. But at any rate, I was dazed as hell. I was literally seeing stars. And this is where I really screwed up. I gave the police a fake name, and it was so obviously fake that I didn't even really think they were going to take it seriously. I thought they were going to be like, oh, come on, stop fucking around or we'll arrest you. What's your real name? But they didn't, right? So I'm just rolling with it because I didn't know this at the time, but I had a concussion. I really needed medical attention that I should have sought. And that is probably my only regret from the day, is not wearing my helmet and not getting medical attention for the concussion. But to my absolute shock, the police did not arrest me on sight. I thought for sure they were going to arrest me. They were going to shake me down, take all my shit. They didn't. They let me get in my car and ride away. The one guy, who I'm pretty sure was Columbus counterterror, he followed me for about 2 minutes. It was really easy to shake. And that, I'm pretty sure that's how they ID'd me, using my license plate and, you know, also voice and eyes, my biometric info from my arrest in 2020. But to kind of bring it all back around, Krusty the Crusader and Coveralls both made a big deal online, huge stink, trying to allege that I had maced this child. And the story got wilder and wilder. By the time it made it to Antifa Watch, they were claiming I maced an 8-year-old. They made a couple of accusations that I was a child groomer, threw out some other names, and unfortunately took those down. I would have loved to sue them for libel, but I think they figured out that they were giving me the perfect opportunity. Long story short, I just kind of jived and kept living my life for the next few months. Then I'm just living my life. Wadsworth is in March, mind you. And at the end of July, I get pulled over and dragged out of my car and told that I'm being arrested on an active warrant from Wadsworth. I was like, what? That took him a while. In the intermediate, I had Columbus counter-terror agents show up at my door and leave their business cards. I had Columbus police like detain me for stupid illegal reasons, claiming it was illegal to flyer in public spaces. They were very clearly fucking with me, trying to get me to escalate my situation in the meantime. I guess eventually they figured out I was smarter than them and wasn't going to give them the rope to hang me with, and just decided to file the charges. Long story short, I got hauled in July on 3 counts of assault and 1 count of falsification. So the assault charges were 1 for the 12-year-old who was never maced, 1 for Krusty the Crusader, who literally ran into the cloud himself, 1 for Proud Baby, who fucked around and found out, and then the charge of falsification because I told an idiot cop that my name was Leon Stalin, and this dumbass motherfucker didn't realize that was a fake-ass name until he looked it up later. So I took an L walking into a falsification charge. He took an L admitting in a public document that he didn't realize that was a fake-ass name. So we both took an L. I think it's a fair cop. The 3 assault charges obviously were bullshit, right? Because Ohio is supposed to be a stand-your-ground state. If you fear for the life of yourself or another person, if you have reasonable cause to fear for human life, you're allowed to defend yourself with lethal force. So I had coveralls waving this pocket mace at me that I thought at the time was a pistol. I had Proud Baby, who had just hit me in the head with a blunt force instrument, which is what the megaphone became when he chose to use it as a bludgeon. I had fucking Krusty the Crusader running in here with a sword on his belt, dressed like he's ready to ride off to the Holy Land. In my opinion, under the letter of the law, I would have been within my rights to empty both of my mags into Proud Baby right then and there. I did not, because I couldn't be sure of what was behind him, and it would have just caused a firefight. That's why I chose the mace instead. But by the letter of the law, I should never have been charged with assault. By the letter of the law, the only actual crime I committed was falsification. But when it comes to dealing with anti-fascists, really when it comes to dealing with anybody, that the state doesn't like. The law binds you but does not protect you. So they chose not to interpret the law the way it was written. They basically decided, oh, actually, stand your ground doesn't apply to trans anti-fascists. And they charged me with assault. And lucky for me, my friends were ready to answer the phone and ready to drive up to Medina County and post my bail. And I spent less than 24 hours in custody. All in all, it was definitely the easier of my arrest experiences. And that's when the court case began.
I spent 3 days in Medina.
You spent 3 days?
I spent 3 days in Medina, and in the past, when I got arrested for BLM protesting, I spent about a week in Cleveland for spray painting. Yep. For an M4 that got completely dismissed like in a month. So yeah.
Yeah, they came down hard during BLM.
Yeah, during BLM, they were trying to like get us out of the streets, and they released me the day before the presidential debate. So fuck them. They released me in the perfect time because I went straight home, took a shower. It was like 4 a.m. when I was released. Got like an hour of sleep, and right at 5 or 6, I was already out there like getting ready with people to fuck the presidential debate as much as we could. So, but with that, let me go back to us for a second here and ask you: do you feel that the organizer, Aaron Reed, put any people in danger, especially children or like, you know, people that were in there going to his event?
No, unequivocally, I think the fault for fascist violence always lies with the fascists. I think Aaron made some tactical choices that I would have made differently. His approach to organizing was different than I would have taken, but I don't think that was like his fault per se. He was operating on the assumption that the police were going to do what we are told their job is, right? As an anti-fascist, I go in knowing the cops are always going to side with the fash. The cops exist to protect property and to uphold the various hierarchies of our society, right? Aaron Reed went in under the assumption that the police are here to protect and serve. And, you know, I know that to be false, but I don't think it was his fault for operating on that assumption. You know, it's nobody's fault that we are indoctrinated with false political consciousness in this country. The fault for putting people in danger was entirely with the fascists and the cops and the other forces in the town who I allege invited and supported them. I've heard a lot of criticism of Aaron Reed, and I think that under these circumstances, that's actually really unprincipled. I stand with Aaron, even though I would have made some decisions differently. I think ultimately he did nothing wrong.
So now I'm going to ask you relating David Williams. He's the council president for Westworth. And, you know, there's about 7 council people, I think, at large. If I'm correct, there was an election before this, or I think like during that time for some candidates in Westworth also then were part of this. Do you think city council, like the whole council pretty much, the mayor of Westworth and the staff members of City Hall had something to do with the situation? Did they have anything to do with the Nazis showing up, specifically Proud Boys? We saw like KKKs. Do you think they had anything to do with this specific like members showing up?
That's a really good question. I allege that the city did not want the event to go forward. I allege that the city knew if they did not issue the permit, they would be violating the First Amendment in a way that would make them really easy to sue. I do not feel that I have the evidence to allege any names beyond the name Gary Fox. What I do have is evidence that this guy, Gary Fox, who is apparently a campaign manager for some city officials, this guy, Gary Fox, was in close communication with Aaron Reed, mocking him and arguing about the event. Gary Fox was posting on social media, making it really clear that he's an anti-gay, anti-trans bigot. I have screenshots of Gary Fox in the fascist chats collaborating with Proud Boys and other fascists. I actually sent you a link to that to substantiate those claims. Aaron Reed did give me permission to share those screenshots. in which we'll read you some highlights here. In one of them, Gary says that nobody is gay and nobody is trans and that they just need Jesus. In another one, Gary alleges that he prayed his own gay away. There's a screenshot here where Gary is just straight up.
If I'm also correct, Gary invited Aaron to his house, and Aaron mentioned this in his podcast episode that you can go and see. It's called Infamous Wadsworth Story Hour. And in this podcast, and Gary did invite Aaron to his house and inappropriately tried to approach Aaron before this happened. So says a lot. To my understanding, Aaron and Gary went to church together as kids. And, it's a small town. They basically grew up together. So I don't know any details beyond what was in that podcast. But I know I've got screenshots right here making it really clear that Gary Fox is a self-loathing queer man who has decided to project that self-loathing onto the queer community at large. I've got screenshots here of him in direct communication with the fascists. So I can say at the very least, I can very confidently allege, based on this screenshotted material, Gary Fox did collude with the fash. It would not surprise me at all if there were other individuals colluding. The statement that was issued by the city, I included that in the file dump in that link. The statement that was issued by the city, if you read between the lines, they're basically saying, we don't like this drag stuff either, but if we don't give him the permit, we're going to get sued. So they couldn't stop it through official means. Yeah, exactly. They couldn't stop it through official means, so they went to unofficial means. Yeah, it sounds like I'm reading the statement and pretty much it says they understand the strong opinions and concerns on all sides of the event being proposed at Memorial Park. That's where the story hour took place.
Yeah,
we are listening and we are committed to making a decision that adhere to the law and ensures safety of our citizens. They did not do that, and we have to be very honest and complete 100% with that. They did not ensure the security or safety of any citizen other than the fascists on their side.
Yeah, no, on the contrary, I can confirm they removed the barrier that was supposed to be keeping the event safe. They chose not to protect the event attendees. There are even interviews I've watched with some of the fash where different individuals on the other side are straight up saying, yeah, the police removed the barrier so we could get in there and really yell at them.
Exactly. So, yeah. So with that, let me jump in and ask you, do you have any regrets on that day? Any regrets at all, with that specific event?
I regret not wearing my helmet. I kind of half regret telling a cop that my name was Leon Stalin. For everybody listening, don't lie to the police. It is a charge unto itself. It will get you in more trouble. If I could go back and do it all again, I would have worn my helmet so that I would have been thinking clearly. And I would have just put my foot down and said, I'll give you my info after you arrest me. That's really the only regret I have. I don't regret driving 100 miles to help. I don't regret macing a Proud Boy and making him cry and vomiting all over his beard. That was pretty epic. No, I don't like
epic. I do have
it
to
was
say
epic.
That.
I don't like causing people pain, but I don't consider fascists people. So yeah, fuck around, fucking find out. And the Proud Boys, the Cleveland chapter in particular, has been low-key obsessed with me since then. I guess because, I imagine if I was a fascist and my entire ideology was built on cis male supremacy and transphobia, it would really fuck with my ego and the consistency, well, the alleged consistency of my ideology, to see one of my buddies get completely thrashed by a 5-foot-tall dude with no balls.
Yeah, and that person got to vomit over themselves. So now you mentioned that. So you had a court case relating this stuff. You went to trial, if I'm correct.
Sort of. I went all the way up to trial day. I showed up for the trial. We ended up not doing the trial. The whole affair was a ridiculous comedy of, I was about to say comedy of errors, but like the prosecution did everything on purpose. It was a farce. It was a Kafkaesque farce, and it was a perfect illustration of the contradictions inherent in our court system. It was a perfect illustration of how courts exist to uphold the actions of dirty cops and to reinforce the ruling class's power. They treated me as though my gear was illegal. They treated me as though I was like automatically a criminal for being an anti-fascist. And, that's something we expect going in. Anti-fascists who are educated and informed know that that's going to happen. But it was really illustrative. They offered me a shitty plea deal. They wanted me to plea to a couple of assault charges to have one dropped. And I made it really clear to my lawyer, I'm not taking any plea deal that includes assault charges. I will plead to falsification because that was a stupid thing to pull. But like, I'll take that plea deal now if they'll drop all the assault charges. In the long run, that's what they ended up doing. But first, we had this ridiculous back and forth where they didn't hand over the evidence at first, and then they just handed over a fraction of it. We read through the police reports, and my lawyer and I both noticed, oh, they're referencing body cam footage here from specific officers, multiple officers, but we only got back one body cam. So we pressed them over and over to give us this body cam footage or dismiss the case. Then eventually the prosecutor was like, it looks like it was purged, it was destroyed, in contradiction to Wadsworth's own policy, right? Their policy says, if there is body cam footage or any evidence relating to an active case, especially an active criminal case, they are supposed to preserve it from 365 days from the date it was collected. They deleted the body cam footage that was exculpatory to me. They kept the one body cam that showed me lying to the cop and scratching my head and seeing stars. They also included the footage from the gazebo, but in an unopenable file format. We had to argue with the prosecutor about how file formats work to get him to hand it over in a format that we could open and view. They had photos of me from all kinds of different anti-fascist events. They had been photographing and tracking my anti-fascism for, I'm going to say, half a year at least. I think they probably had more they weren't handing over, but so we filed a bunch of motions to get photos of me at other events taken out of the proceedings, and we got that. We filed a bunch of motions to get the case dismissed because of the Brady violations, but the judge was 100% comfortable with active Brady violations on this case. And we kept pressing forward. At one point, kind of jumping back, the moment I realized that I had been put up on Antifa Watch, I was like, oh, okay, two can play at that game. I made a bunch of social media accounts that I decided to call Justice for Leif in Wadsworth. I assembled a bunch of my friends who basically formed an impromptu committee to run these social media accounts and run a fundraiser. And I just started talking about the whole situation to anybody who would listen. I interviewed with Status Coup. I interviewed with It's Going Down. I interviewed with a couple other outlets that ended up not publishing my interview. I think I was a little too radical for their sensibilities, but I brought a lot of radical left attention onto this little town that they were not ready for. At one point, a student organization ended up doing a call-in campaign. This was totally unbeknownst to me, right? They were just like, hey, we heard about this dude who has this case going. Let's do a call-in campaign. This organization with chapters all over the country, they're called the Students for a Democratic Society. All of their chapters just spent 2 days flooding this little office with calls, being like, you need to drop these false charges against Leif. We're using our free speech to tell you to quit messing with Lif Autzen. And then when they stopped answering the phone, they just started flooding their fax machines. I think that really freaked them out. We get to the day before the trial. Literally the night before at like 8 p.m., my lawyer gets an email saying they're dropping the assault charge pertaining to the 12-year-old. And, you know, that makes sense because it was really clear from the video evidence that this kid was never maced, that the dad was, the coveralls was just a liar. So now I'm looking at 2 assault charges and 1 falsification. I went in ready for trial, fully expecting to go to trial. Then Krusty the Crusader walks in, literally in his armor. He looks like he is ready to go lay siege to Constantinople. And Coveralls comes in, dead naming me and misgendering me to the court. He's trying to convince the court that I'm having armed people show up to disrupt. I don't know where he got that idea, but he was dead naming me the whole time. So the court was like, who are you talking about? This dude was so committed to dead naming and misgendering me that he made it impossible for himself to communicate effectively. My favorite sight, though, was Proud Baby, who like started trembling when he saw me and had to like put his face in his hands. I think I gave him PTSD, which again, I'm very proud of because fascists are not people. This is me speculating. I don't know that he got any diagnosis. I'm just speculating based on his behavior. I think for a dude twice my weight to react to me in that way, there must have been some kind of trauma response. I imagine he might not have been maced before, might have made an impression on him. But with the Crusader there in his armor and Coveralls throwing a fit basically in the lobby and Proud Baby looking like he is literally about to cry, I was like, you know what? Let's do this. The jury pool looked extremely old and extremely conservative, but I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Victory or Valhalla. So no sooner did I tell my lawyer that than the prosecution comes back and is like, hey, we're going to offer you the plea deal that you asked for all along. They dropped all the assault charges on the condition that I plea to falsification and disorderly conduct. Now, obviously, the fact that they pled the assaults down to 1 disorderly conduct is bullshit because this is a fucking stand your ground state, right? But in comparison, you know, a minor misdemeanor with $150 fine, it's a lot better than like the possible 90 or 180 days that I could have been looking at in jail, right? So with that in mind, looking at the conservative looking jury pool and also looking at the 12-year-old who is being literally yanked around by his wrist by Coveralls, his dad. The 12-year-old literally looked like he wanted to crawl in a hole and disappear. And I was like, he does not want to testify in this case. In fact, his daddy's probably going to thrash him if this case does not go their way. This is, you know, me speculating on the day of, just based on the family dynamics. I allege that there is probably physical abuse in that household. Anyway, based on the fact that the kid was kind of a victim in the situation, based on the fact that the jury did not look ideal, and based on the fact that I was no longer facing any assault charges, I was like, all right, you know what? I'll take the plea. They gave me a separate date for a sentencing hearing in December. I showed up. It was very interesting. The judge chewed me out for showing up in what he called riot gear, which I found really irritating because if you're going to go to law school and become a fucking judge, you need to learn the difference between riot gear and civilian body armor. He alleged that I had a gigantic knife, which is ridiculous. I had a knife with a blade about this big for scraping stickers off of walls. He chewed me out for having a gun and having body armor, all of which was legal for me to operate. He also alleged that it was disorderly for me to use mace to end the situation, which is Tell me you've never been in an altercation without telling me, right? I had reached a point where my baton was not doing the job. Opening fire would have been completely inappropriate in that situation. Like, what did he expect me to do? Flip the dude? It was perfectly reasonable for me to use the mace. The honorable judge was, with utmost respect to his office, full of motherfucking shit. He also let coveralls get up in front of the stand. Even though the charges pertaining to coveralls had been dropped, coveralls marched his kid out and gave this long, like 5-minute unhinged speech where he dead named and misgendered me the whole time. He was like, oh, Miss So-and-so is mentally ill and Miss So-and-so is unhinged. And yeah, he was leaning into all the tropes. I'm simultaneously a weak little woman who needs to return to God's plan for me, while also being a dangerous militant who's hopped up on testosterone and is out for blood. And he was telling the judge, oh, I think she needs to spend some time in a jail cell. I think she needs to pay me restitution money. He pulls up his phone. He's like, look at this fundraiser. She's calling me a fascist and she's raising a bunch of money for her legal defense. The judge was like, you know, I reviewed the footage. Your son was not maced. He even elaborated on his take on it, which really surprised me. The judge was like, this part was actually reasonable. I was pleasantly surprised. The honorable judge basically said, I saw 2 grown men crying from this mace. The effect was immediate. They could not resist it. Your kid was fine. You are a liar. You're not getting a cent. Sit down. That was very funny and satisfying. So funny and satisfying that I didn't even mind that the judge just decided it was appropriate to let this douche canoe misgender and dead name me in a court of law. Mind you, my legal name and my gender marker have been changed for a good while. Like, I haven't gone by my dead name in a long time. For many trans people, it would have been a very triggering event. It was in many ways an act of social violence for the judge to allow that to happen. That being said, I'm at a point in my transition where I'm very resilient to that kind of thing. I'm a lot less bothered by that kind of thing than a lot of trans people. You kind of have to be an on-the-ground anti-fascist. So it was kind of vindicating because my lawyer had just been saying, this man, Coveralls, is a religious extremist. He was calling for my client's death. He was calling for my client to be cast into a lake of fire by Jehovah. Then Coveralls gets up on the stand and says, Jehovah's going to cast you into a lake of fire, basically confirming everything my lawyer has said. And just making himself look like an absolute nutcase. He really thought he was going to get money out of me. And I think that was the motivation behind claiming his son was maced the whole time. So to round it all out, I was sentenced to 90 days in jail, which was deferred, provided I served 2 years of probation. And this was really clever, right? They put in a no contact order. They retained the victim status of the fascists. The court upholds that the fascists who attacked me are all victims. Proud Baby, the 12-year-old, and Krusty the Crusader are all on this no contact order, which only goes one way. I can't contact them. They're free to contact me. If they would just let bygones be bygones, that'd be fine with me. I would just as soon never hear from any of these bastards again. And I do think the 12-year-old, the kid, was a victim in this situation, though not in the way the court is pretending. But by upholding the victim status of these fascists, making it so that it is illegal for me to be at any event where they are at, the court has basically created a situation where I cannot do on-the-ground anti-fascism in the state of Ohio for the next 2 years, because Krusty the Crusader shows up to everything. And anytime, my probation officer made it really clear, if I'm out in public, be it a protest or even just the grocery store, if Krusty the Crusader is there, if any of the fash are there, I'm supposed to leave. The burden is on me to leave. They were not expecting me to be so good at organizing that I can be just as disruptive while never leaving my couch. And I have continued to be, and it is really, really grinding their gears. But yeah, that's where things stand. I am on probation, and the fascists are big mad that they didn't get any money and I didn't do any time in jail. All things considered, I basically walked away with a slap on the wrist because the community came out for me in solidarity. Oh shit, speaking of the community coming out, another thing I forgot to mention was that the court lied and claimed we didn't submit a witness list in time. They failed to deliver a whole bunch of subpoenas. They did not expect that all of my witnesses were going to show up voluntarily anyway. The Unitarian minister who was there showed out for me. The mom of the kids who we were defending showed out for me. A whole bunch of other anti-fascists showed out for me. I had a bunch of witnesses on my side, and the court tried really hard to suppress them. Didn't work though.
Yeah, because they try. I mean, when my whole thing happened, I needed to go and like testify. I didn't get a subpoena. Like I literally didn't get shit until I got a call like 4 days before letting me know, like, hey, we sent you a subpoena and I don't know if you got it. You haven't called us. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't get it, but whatever, I'll show up still. But moving on now from Wadsworth, let's put Wadsworth a little bit behind now. Let me ask you a little bit about you here. How did you become an anti-fascist? And like, you mentioned a little bit of it. Can you go in depth a little bit of how that happened and how it started?
Yeah, so in a sense, I think I was always an anti-fascist. I've always had a really, what I would describe as a very uncompromising internal moral compass. I have just always felt like I know injustice when I see it. I know right from wrong when I see it. And then as a kid, my parents gave me literature for kids about the Holocaust and about World War II. I grew up in a small town adjacent to Cincinnati. So there was a very strong, thriving Jewish community around, in the areas around me. My dad worked for a Jewish family who were really nice and treated him really well as their employee throughout his career. On the other side of things, I was being raised in this nasty little podunk where people are dropping the K word for Jewish people all the time. People are dropping the N-bomb all the time. And I think my parents my mother specifically wanted to kind of inoculate me against that racism and against that anti-Semitism. So she gave me books about it that were geared toward my age group. One of them in particular was a novel by Lois Lowry called Number the Stars. It is a children's novel, but it can be read by adults. It's written on 2 levels, much like The Giver is. And it is a meticulously researched historical fiction piece about a little girl whose parents are working for the Danish resistance. The Danish resistance figured out really quick they did not have the manpower to literally fight the Nazis. So they basically organized themselves into an underground railroad smuggling Jewish people out of Denmark into Sweden. And they were so fucking good at it, they managed to get 92% of the Jews in Denmark to safety. Absolutely fucking Chad level shit. Superb anti-fascism. And this book was really well written. It was from the point of view of a little girl. Her best friend was Jewish. She was smuggling her friend out of the country to say goodbye forever. And even writing from the point of view of this little girl, the author made it really clear these are life and death stakes. This shit really happened. This shit could happen again. And sometimes people have to risk everything to not be motherfucking fascists, right? So this idea that this was something fucking real was always present in my mind growing up. And I always really internalized this what would I do sentiment anytime we were studying fascism. So when 2017 rolled around and I saw the Unite the Right rally, watched the footage from that, it was really clear to me, okay, this shit is happening again. The real fascism I came to learn is not in any individual like Trump. The real fascism is in the machinations of the state and the state's class collaboration with the most reactionary segments of the working class, which we saw at Charlottesville. So moving forward from there, I just started reading everything I could. Of course, I started with like Jason Stanley, Umberto Eco, the liberal stuff that just like makes lists of characteristics without really analyzing what fascism is and how it works. Started studying, you know, how to handle a firearm, how to handle mace, the real fundamentals. And from there, I started getting into some anarchist writings on fascism, some Marxist writings on fascism, started getting an actual analysis of fascism from people with an actual class consciousness, people who actually understand how fucking politics work. And by the time I was really, really wrapping my head around what fascism is and how it functions, not just what it looks like, but how it functions in relation to the state and the economy. By the time I had wrapped my head around all that, it was time to hit the ground and I was ready.
Thank you. That goes in depth. I don't know if I'm like, I am an anti-fascist, but I don't know if I'm as in depth as you are. I will say, I do the events, I do the protests, I absolutely fight fascism and have been arrested a couple of times for fighting fascists, but I don't know if I'm as like in depth as like, you know, having all that knowledge and stuff. So I will say I know who to call when I have a question.
Yeah, even among anti-fascists, I'm something of an anomaly in that this isn't just something I do, it's my whole fucking personality. And a lot of people cannot handle that. Like, I don't get invited to a lot of parties, which I'm fine with, because I would rather be reading the latest analyses by Adorno, right? But a lot of even anti-fascists in the US are just like not prepared for the level of intensity that I bring to this.
Well, when I was working on creating a bio for this podcast, I kind of use myself because I cannot sit down on a table without speaking politics to someone. So I call it like the intro to it was like, are you one of those people that cannot sit at the dinner table without speaking politics and like getting kicked out of? Like, I got banned from Thanksgiving one year from my family because I brought so many politics that my mother just said like, hey, like show up later, don't show up like at all. And then she kind of like unbanned me, but still like it was funny because they didn't want the politics. And it's like my whole life revolves around me. Like I've also been uninvited from places for just speaking politics. So yeah,
I see everything as political. Everything is political. Anybody claiming that anything is apolitical is being incredibly political just by claiming that.
Exactly.
I uninvited myself from Thanksgiving a few years ago when I realized, like, oh, the first Thanksgiving was actually a celebration of a massive massacre of indigenous women and children. I don't think I can do this anymore, guys.
I started getting uninvited from different Thanksgivings when I started bringing up like the meaning behind the holiday. The same thing, like I pretty much, I tend to like to ruin things for people. Like your horrible like holidays, I like to like ruin them. So like show them the realistic part of it, and people hate me for it.
Dude, there is this one incident I will never forget where my mom was making breakfast for Christmas Day. And, you know, I'm a fucking pagan. I don't even give a shit about Christmas. I was just trying to enjoy breakfast, and I'm just trying to have a conversation. She brings out the oatmeal, and I see the Quaker Oats container on the counter. I'm just trying to have a fucking conversation. I'm like, hey, did you know during the 1940s and 50s, the United States government, in partnership with Quaker Oats, fed Quaker Oats laced with plutonium to a bunch of developmentally disabled kids to see how it would affect their growth over the course of their lives, and they told their parents they were participating in a science club? The whole family goes silent and looks at me and is like, what? Nothing will clear a room faster than talking about the shit the government has done that they themselves admit in declassified docs, man.
That just sounds like something that I would do at breakfast.
And if any of your listeners don't believe me, go fucking look it up. They fed oatmeal laced with plutonium to developmentally disabled kids. Look it up.
It's the American government. I mean, if you don't believe it, then you should do some research on the American fucking government. And then you'll find it. So let me ask you, what are strategies that queer anti-fascists use to combat fascism? What are the main challenges that you face, and how do you oppose those challenges, far-right movements and systemic oppression?
That is an excellent question. In terms of systemic oppression, I'm going to kind of attack your question backwards. Fighting systemic oppression usually comes from other fronts, from organizing that people are doing against capitalism, basically. Anti-fascism is kind of an emergency measure. It's kind of like political firefighting. Fascism exists to reinforce that oppression on all fronts. So in a sense, we're kind of combating the oppression when we do anti-fascism, but only in the sense that a firefighter is pushing back against urban decay by trying to keep a fire from consuming all of Chicago, right? The real combating of systemic oppression can only happen through the dismantling of the state, through the dismantling of the police and the courts, the dismantling of the capitalist and imperialist system as a whole. So the TLDR of that is you have to basically be an enemy of the state, be fighting to tear down the American lie, both at home and abroad. In terms of strategies we use, anti-fascism is a multi-front process, right? It usually starts like, hey, we're going to hit up this venue and let them know that they're platforming fascists and the community doesn't like it. We're going to boycott this bar. We're going to inundate this bar with phone calls because they keep hosting Nazi bands. Or we're going to write letters to the editor so that the community knows that this organization that's calling themselves patriots is actually the worst kind of patriots, like the kind of patriots you don't want moving in next door. A lot of anti-fascism happens from the couch. We have people who just record as much as they can find of what fascists are up to and keep it in a spreadsheet. We have people who just go around photographing fascists at events and putting it into encrypted file dumps. That part you can't do from the couch. The parts that you can do from the couch are the easiest parts to get people engaged in. Now, the challenging part is getting people to come out and throw down when all of that other shit doesn't work and the time comes to throw down. Because people don't want to get in trouble. People have all these ridiculous ideas that punching Nazis makes you just as bad as Nazis, you know. One of the biggest obstacles we face is when the people hosting the event have the wrong idea about anti-fascists and have the wrong idea about police. Using Wadsworth as an example, we were lucky in that Aaron Reed was glad to have us. We were facing an obstacle in that Aaron believed the police were going to protect and serve like they are allegedly supposed to do. Sometimes a venue doesn't want any anti-fascists. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, you Antifa rabble-rousers, stay home. You're just as bad as the fascists and you're going to cause a scene. When that's the case, we just show up anyway and don't ask their permission. And they almost always thank us later. I have been to many an event where we were told not to come. We came anyway. We saved their fucking necks. And they thanked us and asked us to advise their next thing. I've been to a lot of events where the organizers were actively against us. We're coming out and saying, you radicals, go home. I think one of the biggest obstacles we face is the liberal leftist dichotomy that has liberals believing that leftists and anti-fascists are just like the other side of the coin of extremism. Another big obstacle that we face is people misunderstanding what fascism is and how it works. A lot of people think you can stop fascism by voting for the blue guy instead of the red guy. That's not how it works. Historically speaking, voting never stops fascism. I could go into tons of examples. If I do, I will soapbox all day. A lot of people believe that fascism comes out and call itself fascist. A lot of people believe that fascism is going to look just like the movements of the past. And a lot of people don't understand that the Proud Boys are fascists because they deny that they're fascist. They don't understand that fascist movements are always obscurantist, that fascist movements they just lie. They straight up lie. They have in-group message and out-group message, and they're willing to lie to accomplish their goals. To give it a TLDR, I think the ignorance of the general public about how our political system really works and how fascism really functions in relation to capitalism. That and queerphobia. You know, a lot of people just take one look at me and they're like, man, you're 5'2". You were assigned female at birth. There's no way that you could have any idea what you're talking about. There's no way that you could have any experience fighting fascists in the street. I'm protected by double jeopardy on the Wadsworth situation. I can't get into a lot of other shit I've been doing. Suffice to say, people who fuck around with me find out and have found out and will continue to find out. But I have trouble getting even seasoned anti-fascists to take me seriously because I'm fucking tiny and because transandrophobia is real. But, you know, we power through, and I've kind of reached a point ever since this shit went public with Wadsworth. I've reached a point where, like, I'll meet people and they've heard of me and I have a reputation, and they'll be like, oh shit, I imagined you'd be taller. Okay, tell me what to do.
That is hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. When I just saw you on the call and I saw you in person, I thought the same thing. I mean this in the less offensive way I can. I don't know how to put it, but I thought I definitely, when I saw you in person, I was like, holy shit! I thought he would be taller.
No, I get that a lot, and
Like,
I've learned to interpret it as a compliment. I do think it says something about like our society's perception of size and masculinity and strength. But on the whole, like, if my reputation and the way I carry myself has people expecting a much bigger dude, that means they've built up an image of me in their head that is larger than life. And that's good. That means my deeds speak for themselves.
There you go. So let me now ask you. You know, you share how you joined the anti-fascism and groups like that. So what do you recommend for people who want to get involved in anti-fascist movements, but are not able due to physical stuff, due to disabilities, other issues? They may not have the transportation. They might not be able to walk and stuff like that. How do you recommend for them to get involved, and what are the best strategies?
Yeah, so if there's a physical barrier to participation, say you walk with a cane or you are homebound, there are still ways to get involved. There are people who monitor police scanner traffic during these events. There are people who just archive info on fascists and collate the data and comb through it for relevant info. There's always a way to get involved, and the vast majority of the work is not on the ground. You have your maintenance workers, basically, who make sure the fire code is up to snuff. Then you have the firefighters like me who come and put out the fire. We really need more people. Well, we need more people to do both. But if you're somebody who doesn't want to, dress up like a ninja and go pick fights, I mean, I shouldn't say pick fights. I don't start fights, I finish them. But if you're not somebody who wants to throw down and finish fights, there are tons of other ways to get involved. You can coordinate ride shares. You can give people rides the day of. You can do public relations stuff. In terms of how to get involved, that is the hardest part, because anti-fascists in the United States are understandably a very paranoid bunch. The legacy of COINTELPRO is still with us. People are very concerned about getting infiltrated by bad actors. If you want to get involved with anti-fascism, your best bet really is to join some kind of leftist organization some kind of community defense organization and just keep showing up. Make it clear what you're about, make it clear what your values are. And when you hear about fascists organizing, do something about it. You know, if you're in a place where there is no anti-fascist presence, become that presence. You don't have to call it anti-fascism to do anti-fascism. For example, I had a conversation recently with a young lady who is going to a small community college. I won't say where. It's a small campus. Patriot Front has been recruiting on the campus. She wanted to know, how do I get started doing Antifa shit against these guys? I told her, keep track of where they're putting their agitprop. See if you can spot them. See if you can get footage of them. You know, dox them, out them as fucking fascists. Because there is no action against fascism that is not justified. Ruin those motherfuckers' lives if you can. The other side of it is call a meeting, like call a campus meeting. You don't even have to call it Antifa. You can just say, hey, this is an open public meeting for concerned citizens because Patriot Front is on our campus and that is not a good thing. So let's have a meeting about it. And if there is no anti-fascist presence on your campus and you do that, boom, now you are the anti-fascist presence. Good luck. You have a circus to wrangle and a ton of clowns and monkeys, but it's better than sitting around and doing nothing. It's going to be drama. It's going to be work. You're going to be tearing your hair out most days and wondering, why the fuck did I get into this? But then you'll have those days where you get to mace a fucking Proud Boy straight in the eyes and throat, and it's all worth it.
Absolutely. And, you know, talking about this, I don't think this is like a question real quick. So January 6th, you know, they were celebrating the proud, I don't know if to call her a proud boy. Was she a proud boy, proud lady? I don't know exactly.
She was a QAnon fanatic.
Ashley Babbitt is her name.
Ashley Babbitt, yeah.
Fuck her, and may she be burning in hell. So, you know, you were part of the organizing for that. The anti-fascists show up in there. You put it on your social media.
Part of it. I put it all together. I got the intel. I brought the intel to the community. I said, here's what we're going to do. Are you all on board? And it fucking worked. This lady, Dawn Moody, the one I was talking about who has been involved with Bikers for Trump, she has like a ton of different front orgs for all her fascist bullshit.
Short lady, megaphone. Yep, I remember her.
Yeah. She and her buddy, Carrie Brost, are like two cheeks of a fascist ass. They organize together. They move together. They planned this thing claiming, oh, it's a memorial for Ashley Babbitt. And I guess it's their holiday now to celebrate their failed coup. One, these people don't know how a coup works, because if you don't actually seize the means of production and the mechanisms of the state itself, you're basically just having a tantrum in the halls of government and making a mess. Anyway, they've decided it's their holiday. So yeah, I just called up everybody I knew and was like, hey, you want to come fuck with their shit?
I know, and they took our Latino holiday. That's regularly Three Wise Men's Day, and Latinos celebrate. That's like their holiday, January 6th. So I was like, fuck, now the Trump supporters are taking our holiday days.
Is that the celebration where the like the reenactment goes door to door and people like sing a song and get turned away?
So no, that one is Christmas Eve. That's how they celebrate like Christmas Eve.
Oh, okay.
So they knock and they call it a parranda, which is pretty much like they go with instruments and kind of like sing and whatever. They have so I think in English it's called Epiphany, if I'm correct. I don't know exactly. January 6th, it's like three wise men supposedly like come and deliver their gifts to Jesus Christ. Like they give gold to a goddamn baby, whatever. So yeah. But yeah, to me, it's more like tradition than even like the biblical part of it at this point. But yeah, I was like, shit, now that the MAGA people are taking our holidays.
Man, but I had no idea that was a celebration.
No, yeah, it's America don't really like, it's not as much as in the American area as it is in Puerto Rico. I think Puerto Rico celebrates it more than any other place. So
it sounds like a holiday that would be hard to commodify, and Americans only like holidays that can be commodified and sold.
It is very hard. I mean, the day before January 5, kids go outside around like 5 to 7 p.m. and pick up grass to leave for the camels, for the wise man. And then you get gifts. So you pretty much get gifts on the 25th and you get gifts on the 6th. So you get 2 sets of Christmas kind of celebration gifts. So I don't know. I kind of liked it when I was a kid. I got 2 gifts for no reason. Like, hell yeah.
I sang an opera when I was in college called Amal and the Night Visitors that is just a story about the 3 wise men bunking at some at some peasant household on their way to see Jesus, and they make friends with a little boy and take him along, and he's like one of the little musicians. It's a cute show. Some of it doesn't hold up. There's some weird racial commentary in there that does not need to be there, but it's an interesting opera. It's by Menotti.
That's good to know. I'm part of a board for an opera group in Cleveland. Just recently started, and they chose me to be part of their board. So
I'm gonna send you the title.
Perfect. I will look at that after this. So
let me ask you, believe it or not, I used to sing the role of the mother.
Now that I want a video of.
I actually don't have any. I barely have any video of my performances because, when you perform as much as I used to, it just became old hat. And I kind of wish I had saved more, because people don't believe me when I say, like, oh yeah, I played Tevye's wife Golda in Fiddler on the Roof a bunch of times. I played the daughters in Fiddler on the Roof another time. I played the evil sorceress in Dido and Aeneas. Like, nobody believes me.
This is amazingly cool. This is like a fun fact that I didn't know, but I'm like glad I know now.
I'll send you that other opera to Dido and Aeneas. It was actually the first opera written in the English language. And there is only one named male role. It is the hero Aeneas. The composer Purcell wrote this opera to be performed by a girls' finishing school. He basically wrote this for a school to perform, and they made the janitor play Aeneas. So the part is like tiny.
My God, poor man. He just had to, like, on top of cleaning the school, have to practice for this shit.
I know, right?
Horrible for that poor man, but
sorry, I'll let you bring it forward.
You have to do it for the art. So let me bring it forward to you actually with performance and stuff. When did Captain Leif Iron-leg started? When does this became a thing?
Yes, so that I debuted Captain Leif Iron-leg and unanimously declared myself Pirate King of Ohio pretty much right after I took my plea deal. I understand there have been some rumors that I started dressing as a pirate to make fun of a particular individual who shall not be named. I just want to assure everyone that this is entirely true. And I never intended it to, like, become an ongoing kayfabe. But when I started this gag, I already had a bunch of pirate clothes tucked away because I was a theater kid who never threw anything away. I really intended it as a short-term gag, but then the right-wing reactions online were just hilarious. Like, all the Proud Boys and all these other right-wing stalkers who have become obsessed with me, including coveralls, have been like, oh my God, this guy's mentally ill. This guy thinks he's a pirate. The transes are identifying as pirates. They're not sending their best. It's fucking hilarious. They don't understand how humor works. They don't understand irony on any level. And I am perfectly happy to just hump that fence between kayfabe and reality for as long as it continues to drive them insane. So yeah, I'm a pirate. I'm a fantastic pirate, and I've always been a pirate. I'm the captain of my own ship. And in the event of civil collapse, I am going to terrorize the Great Lakes.
That sounds amazing. Please take me with you. So let me add, with this pirate thing, actually, I wanted to ask. You have mentioned in the past to me that people have even supported it. Like, you have had, like, people text you, send you gifts. Like, I think one of your hats was also, like, a gift, which is going to be the hat using the thumbnail of this episode. was a gift. So like people have also become part of like the pirate thing with you.
Yeah. Well, queer people right now really love pirates. Pirates have been a really potent symbol for queer people in modern times. Sailors have always kind of been associated with gay dudes because for a long time, if you were a dude who wanted to partner up with other dudes, the smartest way to live was to have a profession that set you apart from most of society. Being a sailor, being a pirate, a cowboy, pretty much anything that got you out of, the main society into a homosocial space with its own rules and its own social mores. That was how you existed as a queer. If you look back at the history of pirates that we have at least written down that has been preserved, there were a lot of individuals involved in piracy who we might describe as flamboyant gays, who we might describe as gender nonconforming. We don't know how these individuals understood or expressed their own identities per se, but queer people today very much see ourselves in these historical figures and in, the fiction of pirates. I think what is most potent for me at this moment, and what is most potent for a lot of people who have reached out to me about it, is that in a lot of the United States, they are literally making it illegal to be trans. They are making it virtually illegal to be queer. They want to push us out of public life. Some people are even calling for the eradication of what they're calling transgenderism. The rhetoric is really just Weimar shit. It is Nazi propaganda repackaged for fools with Twitter. So a lot of people are feeling like their very self, their very identity is making them into an outlaw. So people want to see themselves in some kind of positive outlaw. Now, obviously, we know pirates were doing a lot of cruel and brutal shit. They were, holding people ransom, killing people, sinking ships. They were also, in some cases, freeing entire ships worth of enslaved people. In some cases, pirates were costing companies and crowns the modern equivalent of millions of dollars. The piracy that we think of when we think of like the golden age of piracy was really coming into being around the same time capitalism was coming into being. We see the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, or what is sometimes euphemistically called triangular trade, right? And with it, the birth of the first joint stock companies and the first capital. The first capitalism and the first capital that the ism was built on, that capital was produced by selling and enslaving the labor of human beings from Africa. And then the goods from that were being transported back and forth and back and forth. It was the perfect environment in which maritime piracy could thrive. And in some cases, pirates established whole republics, short-lived and kind of messy, but they were experimenting with egalitarian forms of self-governance in the spaces from which the state had retreated. You had Nassau Port, for example. Both the English and the Spanish, who were the two major maritime powers at the time, they kind of pulled out in the same way that the Roman Empire pulled out of Britain. And in that power vacuum, the fucking pirates moved in, and they made a little republic for a while. And it didn't last long, but it was really fucking cool. And I guess the TLDR is pirate history is queer as fuck. Pirate fiction is queer as fuck. Queer people are both literally and figuratively being made outlaws. So we might as well enjoy it. The more people reach out to me.
Oh, sorry. Finish up.
Sorry. Finally finishing the thought. I know I'm a long-winded guy. The more people reach out to me and say that the pirate shtick is funny and or meaningful, the longer I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm having a blast.
Absolutely. And I mean, I was going to say, like, you mentioned two things and got me immediately thinking of the gayest, like, singing group, Village People. They sing in the Navy, which it's the gayest song that there could ever be. I mean, it literally is about it. And then they had, in the YMCA, they literally had different groups of like dress as different men, there are regularly the ones that are around other men.
Yeah, every
things, in my head,
character.
the first thing that came was the village people.
Yeah, every character in the Village People is an archetype that features prominently in macho, mask on mask, gay fantasy. I think if they change up a couple of those archetypes, maybe do a Viking instead of a native chief or something like that, you know, maybe a leather biker instead of a cop, maybe a pirate instead of a cop. Maybe, you know, we need a revival of the Village People. Other singers, hit me up. But yeah, and the YMCA, let me tell you, for a while, in that weird interim space where gay men were starting to hook up, starting to talk publicly about their identities, but gay spaces had not yet really been established, the YMCA kind of turned into that gay space. And no matter how hard the official YMCA tried to stop it, dudes kept hooking up and fucking at the YMCA. Dudes kept organizing at the YMCA.
And I mean, then you have a song that is like the gayest song to them. So yeah, I agree. So let me really quick, I wanted to ask you, I had some emails while you know, in the past we recorded an episode and we had to put that backwards for a little.
Ooh,
and I had an email to me, and I regularly don't do this. I regularly don't ask questions that are sent by people, but I thought this question was hilarious and I wanted to just drop it in. It is on you to answer. You don't have to answer. I want you to know the individual, I am assuming it's the person that we refer to as coveralls. I think you refer to them. Coveralls, yes, coveralls.
Yeah, coveralls has been like totally obsessed with me.
So I would tell you that they did not name you in this specific email. So I was very surprised. And it says, who was slave at Wasworth? There were no pirates there. They say she. By the way, I'm quoting. I'm not. So she is open about being trans.
Read it verbatim. Read it verbatim.
She is open about being trans. So who was Leif before Leif? Why do you why do you go FTM? So as you mentioned before, you actually gave me for the first time this in my head. I wasn't even ever aware of this term existed. I'm not very aware of the acronyms, but female to male, I think it's the FTM that you told me earlier. So
yeah, it's kind of an outdated term. Not everybody likes it. Some trans people embrace FTM, which means female to male, or MTF, which means male to female. Some people resent those terms. I think for a lot of people, MTF and FTM have taken on the connotation of porn categories because, well, when you look up trans porn, that's usually how it's categorized. And have you ever heard anybody say, do you have your own porn category or are you privileged?
I have not, but holy shit. Do I have my own porn category? I don't know. Is there a one?
There is, yeah. If you go on Pornhub, there's a whole category for Latinx people. There is a whole category for Black people. There's a whole category for specific situations involving people of color and queer people.
I'll tell you what. And I think I mentioned this to you about Pornhub in the past. I don't know if it was you or someone else, but Pornhub uses the colors and the Proud Boys use. And the first ever...
They do? I thought Pornhub used orange. I gotta look them up.
The first ever Proud Boys flag was actually a slight color of the Pornhub logo. They had like the same color. So Pornhub pretty much went publicly under Twitter. I don't know if you... I follow Pornhub on Twitter. I'm going to be very honest about this. They make the most hilarious tweets after Wendy's. And they share, then they say, like, our most viewed this year was trans. Like, our most viewed searches were trans. And the Proud Boys searched this. And this was, like, the emerge of 2020 when the Proud Boys were trying to, like, stop all this, like, BLM and be racist. So Pornhub pretty much made fun of them because the Pornhub logo used to be their slight yellow than they were using. And Pornhub changed it to a darker orange because they were rebranding right at that moment.
Yeah, I'm looking at their front page right now, and I could have sworn it was always this orange. That being said, I'm not really a Pornhub guy. I prefer to just, like, meet people and have sex.
There you go.
But
So same. But like that's the one thing. Like they made that flag, and so when I used to go to events during 2020, I used to carry a sign that says, "Have you washed your trans porn today?" And I used to just hold it behind like Proud Boys with their flags, pretty much.
Well, it's interesting you
And I
should
think I
mention
have a
that,
couple
because
photos.
something I have learned in the course of doing this anti-fascism, as my anti-fascism has become more and more focused on defending queer events, because that's what the fascists are fixated on, right? We go where they go. I have found that transphobia and trans fetishism form a Venn diagram, and that Venn diagram is actually kind of a giant circle.
Literally,
Like these
one
guys who are obsessed with drag story times are frequently trying a little too hard to get into the drag story time. You know, these dudes cannot distinguish between a performance of femininity and a presumed solicitation of sex. These guys, when they think of a person being trans, they automatically think about people's genitals. They automatically start thinking about people's intimate bits, and they fetishize our very existence. That's why a lot of them, like on the ground level, I could go on forever about like the intersections of transphobia and anti-Semitism in the National Socialist consciousness and why this happens from the top down. But on the ground level, a lot of these dudes just think of us as a porn category. They think of us as inherently, automatically sexualized, automatically like a fetish. They think of us existing, being open about our existence. They think of this as like basically the same as, you know, people dressing up in leather puppy masks and spanking each other in public on the subway, which apparently is happening in New York now, which is an interesting phenomenon. Anyway, the Venn diagram of transphobia and trans fetishism is a giant circle, and it's mostly dudes who come up to harass these events. There are a few women, but it's like 95% men. And I guarantee you, I just speculating, of course, but I guarantee you there are like little brunch parties of ladies who are married to Proud Boys sitting around at home every time these events go down, being like, why are our husbands obsessed with drag queens? Why are our husbands obsessed with drag queens?
You know what? I don't disagree. I think I think that's the reason. So
it's funny you should mention the Village People too, because when the Proud Boys bring out their stereo, they play a lot of Village People. They play a lot of sea shanties. They run around with fucking yellow bandanas in their back pockets like they don't know that's a piss kink signal. They are some of the most homoerotic motherfuckers. Some
really
of these guys are, there are a lot of mask for mask only gay Proud Boys. And I don't know if you use Grindr, but when Proud Boys are rolling into town, it is really funny to pull up Grindr and just see who is in your vicinity. There are a lot of Proud Boys on Grindr.
Another thing, they also use the same colors as Grindr. I have never opened the app, but I know the logo on top of my head. It's like the little cat-looking thing. They have the same colors as Grindr.
Yeah,
it's a cat, right? It's like a cat figure kind of thing.
It's like a mask, and the mask is kind of shaped like.
Okay,
it goes up this way.
Oh, okay. That I always think it's a cat. I don't know. I have a cat, so I guess everything that looks like a cat is a cat to me.
Yeah, I do too.
Another question that I got in that email says, Leif is taking credit for January 6th. Did she watch it live because she wasn't there?
I did watch it live. I watched Krusty the Crusader try to do a bunch of push-ups and watched his arms give out after about 4. I don't know how much weight that chainmail adds, but if I could only do 4 push-ups, I would not be trying it out on the State House lawn. Yeah, I am taking credit because I sat in their Telegram. I collected the intel. I brought the intel to the community and said, hey, go fuck up their shit. And yeah, I watched it live, and I ate chips while I did it.
And then I got another email that says, who does Leif think the Vikings were? The Northman Vikings colonized Europe and became the Normans. Normans are European white who became crusaders, colonizers, and all other white things.
That's an interesting idea. I wouldn't expect them to know that the concept of whiteness, as we know it today, would have been completely foreign to the people that we call Vikings. Viking, I could soapbox about this for ages. Viking really describes an activity and a profession more than a people. Among those people, you certainly had some people who were settling in Normandy and becoming Normans. I'm sure some of them, you know, as they converted to Christianity, did eventually become crusaders. There is tons of scholarship out there about white supremacist ideas being projected onto the people that we call Vikings. I'm not going to, you know, give them that thesis, but I'm sure they're already all over my YouTube. They can look at the playlists that I have about that if they would like. You know, I could soapbox about the gender nonconformity that we see in various sagas. I could soapbox about how the concept of whiteness as we know it today was basically invented to justify the transatlantic slave trade. I could soapbox about the fact that, you know, Viking Age peoples were so weird and clannish. They were, you know, they would look across the water and be like, oh, those people on the other side of the fjord are weirdos. We don't fuck with them. When, you know, to the outside, they would be indistinguishable to us. But, you know, trying to explain academic concepts of history and of how history is weaponized to, you know, people like Coveralls, who I know is probably writing these emails. Or actually, that was a Crusader question, wasn't it? That was probably Krusty the Crusader. Now, I'll tell you what, Krusty the Crusader and Coveralls have become my biggest fans. But
there is one more question there, and it says, well, I don't know how much this is a question. I think this is more of a statement. It says, Bergen basement pirate grab. The pirate thing, I have no idea. It says Bergen.
Bergen? Like the city of Bergen?
I have no idea. That's what I'm assuming. Basement pirate grab. The pirate thing was a mistake. Bring back the commie tanker.
Bring back the commie tanker. That's funny. At the end of my 2-year probation, I'm sure I will be bringing back the commie tanker. It's fun they should mention the commie tanker, because in the first email, they asked about who was Leif at Wadsworth, right? Well, they answered their own question. I was the commie tanker. I was the 5-foot-tall tank who maced their dudes and made them cry. They know who I was. They're welcome to visit lifautzen.com and take a look at the photos of me that they took that make me look fucking hot, in my opinion. Those photos they took of me have gotten me laid so many times over. I cannot tell you how many people have been like, dude, you were that dude at Wadsworth? You were shit. Can this not just be a one-time thing? Can I have your number? Wow, man, that's a good photo of you. If they even knew, man, I would have spent the rest of my life doing anti-fascism anonymously. That was my goal and my intent. But they built me a platform, so I'm gonna keep standing on it.
That is amazing. So let me jump in now that we were talking, you know, pirate and the attires. So cosplay, it's a very common thing now everywhere these days, from like Comic Cons to whatever. I've never been to one of those, but those conventions. You know, I myself once dressed up as a very shitty Alan Scott, which is like the former Green Lantern of the Justice Society of America, for a protest. Not very proud of that, but whatever. So is the pirate thing like something you do public? Like, is it like, or is it just an alter ego like Superman and Clark Kent, or, you know?
I don't know what you mean. I'm a literal actual pirate who does piracy all the time. I'm on a boat right now. No, in all seriousness, whether or not I bring the pirate out to events, whether or not I like show up as Captain Leif Iron-leg, is really going to depend on the event. You know, there are going to be events that call for the commie tanker, and if they like me better that way, that's great. 2 years has given me plenty of time to set new lifting goals. plenty of time to set like new body weight exercise goals. I've already beat my push-up and pull-up record. They're really going to regret giving me 2 years to work on myself. I'll tell you that.
I think
At more lighthearted things,
egos.
In all seriousness, I could totally see myself like reading to kids at drag story things dressed as a pirate. I don't know that it's technically drag if I'm
pirate story hour.
Right. Yeah. I could totally see myself doing like a pirate.
I love that idea. I think that idea will be amazing. A pirate story hour. Like, hell yeah. Let's see like all the Proud Boys. As we were talking, I got a message that pretty much says in the Blood Tribe it's marching in Nashville today. Like,
the Blood Tribe?
Yeah, they were like marching about 2 hours ago. They were in Nashville and they still, well, it says 46 minutes ago, the message that I got sent from the person. So,
yeah, their group is really interesting because like they're the most extreme, right? They're the least marketable. A lot of these fascist movements have figured out we need to be crypto-fascist, right? If we march out here with swastikas, being honest about the fact that we think trans people are a Jewish conspiracy, that turns people off. But the Blood Tribe is really interesting. They have much tighter OPSEC than the other groups. They have much tighter requirements to become a part of the so-called tribe. Their leader, Polhouse, is an ex-Marine. I imagine he knows how to throw down, although I don't know what they train those Marines to do other than munch on crayons in their MREs. Their strategy, according to Polhouse, is to show up, give people PTSD, and leave. I understand they were trying to start some kind of compound recently, and Polhouse got really big mad when the community said, you don't have a safe space here. I understand he also got chased out of a Planet Fitness. I don't know why, but the idea of a Blood Tribe neo-Nazi working out at a Planet Fitness is so fucking funny to me. It's like McGym.
My God, that is fucking hilarious.
I love Planet Fitness because it is McGym. I want to work out with other people who do not take themselves too seriously.
Exactly it. So let me now ask you. You mentioned earlier specifically that you are queer, pagan, anti-fascist. You mentioned all of them together in one sentence, and I'm pretty sure you went into this before. But to ask you again, like, why mention them all together? Why do they all come together into one?
Yeah, like I mentioned, anti-fascism is basically my whole personality. I am also a Norse pagan. A lot of idiots will go, oh, you think you're a Viking. Well, Viking is an activity, and the Viking Age was kind of the nail in the coffin for that form of polytheism. Norse paganism is a living tradition. It's, being adapted and lived by many people who are under no delusions of being Vikings. Like, honestly, if you're calling yourself a Viking, you're either delusional, lying, or have committed war crimes, right? Myself, I'm a Tyrsman. That is to say, I'm devoted specifically to the god Tyr, who I have experienced to be a god of justice, not law, because as anti-fascists know, justice and law are very often two completely separate things that have nothing to do with each other. I won't get into the mythological interpretations of it, but the TLDR is I consecrate myself as a human sacrifice to Tyr every single time I go out and do anti-fascism, with the understanding that if I live, I will celebrate my victory to his glory. And if I die, hopefully, I will feast with the gods. So far, I have had pretty much only victory. Hail Tyr. And the fact of the matter is, fascism is opposed to anything queer, and in this particular time and place, anything not Christian. Fascism in Europe, in what we call the West, has historically allied itself with Christianity. In Germany, we saw them kind of reinvent their own form of Christianity. In Italy and Spain, we saw a really tight alliance with the Catholic Church, with their fascist movements. Fascists today are largely Christian nationalists. They want to see the nation reshaped in a Christian image, in what they believe to be a biblical ideal. This biblical ideal that they hold is fundamentally anti-queer, and it's also fundamentally anti-polytheist. As a monotheist, thought form, their Christofascism rejects the idea that there can be more than one God. They reject the idea that there can be more than one truth. I call myself a queer pagan anti-fascist because I'm kind of a triple threat. I know how to throw down. I do not fear their God. My God is older and much, much cooler. And one of them has a big, big hammer. Their God got nailed to a log. They can do the math. And, as a queer person, I'm subverting multiple hierarchies there. Historically, fascism, going all the way back to Mussolini and all the way back to the Nazis, they have classified queerness as what they would call a Talmudic abstraction, a separation of the physical from the ideological. Man, I could really get into a soapbox here. If you visit my website, lifautzen.com, and click on library, there's a couple articles that dig really deeply into the anti-queerness aspect. The Eradication of Talmudic Abstractions by Joni Eliza Cohen is a really revealing article. It gets into deep detail about why queer people are a threat to fascism and to capitalist hierarchy at large. My approach to anti-fascism is very much informed by my internal moral compass, which tells me that queer people deserve to exist without apology. And the more radically they push down against us, the more they try to crush us with that boot, the more we're going to rise. I really, really enjoy the fact that I clearly scare the shit out of them. Otherwise, they wouldn't go to such lengths to ritually denigrate me in their little chats. And it is a ritual. It's like an affirmation ritual to soothe their wounded egos. As a pagan, my approach is very much one rooted in the mythology that has come down to us through the ages. Much like the gods who gather their army for the doom of the powers, knowing that they're going to lose that conflict, anti-fascists also have made a decision to fight fascism no matter what, even if it's a losing battle, because we would rather be dead anti-fascists than be motherfucking fascists. And we do this with the knowledge that even if we fall, one, if you fight to fall, sometimes you can live forever. And two, if you die for something that really matters, you don't even have to die for it. If you fight for something, if you live for something that really matters, even if we don't see the downfall of fascism today, even if we don't see the true, complete queer liberation that we wish to see in our lifetime, it's enough to be a part of making that happen. None of the gods who participate in the final battle of myth survive it to see the new world that comes after, right? This idea of Ragnarok is not like a Christian apocalypse where time just stops. It's a new beginning. I don't literally believe that I'm fighting Ragnarok, obviously. This is a metaphorization, just as Christianity was intended at one point to be a metaphorization. The TLDR is pagan mythos, the story of Tyr binding the wolf, the story of Ragnarok, the concept, the cosmological concept of the eternal return, all of these give me courage and meaning. And I kind of feel bad for atheist anti-fascists who feel like, if they fall fighting, it all just ends. That must really suck.
Well, thank you. That explained that part completely to me. So I hope that it explained it to everybody else. By the way, I love the website. A lot of information. And
thank you. It started as a
photos
joke.
Amazing.
One of my friends was like, "Oh, dude, you're a niche micro celebrity in a tiny niche micro community now. You need your own website. I bought you the domain of your name." I was like, "What? You bought me lifautzen.com? What the fuck am I going to do with this? Nobody makes a website anymore." But I've been having a lot of fun with it.
There you go. So with that, let me ask you, what's next for Leif? What is next in your activism journey? What is next for Captain Leif Iron-leg? What is coming up next?
So in this moment, I am doing what I call public anti-fascist education. I am, as you can see on my website, I've just turned it into a resource for information and reading about anti-fascism, putting together playlists about anti-fascism, goofy little informational videos. I'm trying to educate as many people as I can, get as many people on board in an informed way as I can. I'm having a blast meeting people from all over the country, all over the world, talking to them about fascism and anti-fascism. And I've got basically 2 years to do that and to make myself into even more of a tiny commie tanker.
I know, now you have the chance to create both alter egos and even better.
I personally don't see it as an alter ego. It's all just the kayfabe and the reality have become indistinguishable for me at this point. And you know what? Great. I've got a crazy stalker who thinks that I don't know that all of these ridiculous emails are one guy. I mean, Coveralls is so obsessed with me. He even started emailing my lawyer, pretending to be other people, being like, "Oh, Leif is a celebrity activist, and you should represent him pro bono because he's the GOAT."
Oh, I love when older people try to use the Gen Z lingo and they fail at it.
It's all very obviously Coveralls because he always dead names me with the same spelling. He always phrases things the same way. He's even got one account where he's pretending to be a Muslim, but he didn't bother to research how. His whole bit on this one account is that he's some kind of radical Islamic militant who hates queer people, but he didn't do any research about how people like that talk about their religion. He just says the same shit he always says about Jehovah, substitutes Allah, and expects it to land. And I'm over here like, man, this dude is fucking obsessed. And I'm lucky he's an idiot because if he wasn't a fucking idiot, with all this time on his hands and all this obsession, I'm sure he could do some damage. I've got this other crazy stalker who thinks he's a crusader, who in some ways probably is a crusader. I'm sure he thinks that he is fighting for some kind of tradcath Christo-fascist dominion on Earth. And okay, fine. I wish that all of the fascists were that open about who they are and what they believe. And my point is, my life is so surreal that the only thing I could possibly do that makes any sense is to just make it even more absurd and surreal.
That's the best way to do it, I think. I mean, they are, I don't know how much they're enjoying the pirate, but they're not enjoying it. So it's
based on what this dude has been emailing my lawyer. I think what they're enjoying the most are my shirtless selfies, because they will not shut the fuck up about my shirtless selfies. And I guarantee you, I'm not even going to go into that because I'm going to bite my tongue before I say the thing I was about to say because they are so litigious. But yeah, they seem to be really enjoying this masochistic little game they've made of following my social media and complaining to my probation officer about my free speech. And that's great. I don't think they can really tell where the pirate shtick begins and reality begins and ends and vice versa. And that's great. That's the goal.
Absolutely. So with that, I wanted to, thank you for joining me. All the sources and things that you have mentioned will be on the show notes. As always, people will be able to see those right once this podcast is out. You have social medias, right? I see Instagram, TikTok, Mastodon, and YouTube.
Yeah, one thing I want to jump back to really quick is the Viking thing. Fascism depends ideologically on mythologizing a point in the past. For a lot of these fash, the Viking Age is an era which they have mythologized. I've got a whole playlist on my YouTube all about that bullshit and about how it goes all the way back to Richard Wagner. It's a real ride. I don't think they could wrap their heads around it, but if you're listening and you heard the Viking question and went, oh, these fucking idiots, that playlist might be up your alley. Check out my website. I've got a massive reading list for anybody who wants to dig into this and make it their whole fucking personality like me. Some of us has to, right?
Absolutely.
Most of all, check out the article, The Eradication of Talmudic Abstractions. It is on my library page at lifautzen.com. Follow me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Every Sunday at 8 p.m., I am doing a live theory stream where we're going over some anti-fascist theory and having some really engaging discussions. And I also have a Discord for people who I've vetted, who I'm pretty sure are not fascists. You are welcome to join my Discord and watch me stream movies like Inglourious Bastards.
So with that, thank you so much for joining me today. I will put all the social medias and all that on the show notes with more resources and stuff for people to see, and all the show notes will be there with some other stuff. So I don't know, is there anything you would like to add?
Oh gosh, I could talk all day about fascism, anti-fascism. If you're watching my social media and you're wondering, is this a joke? Is he serious? Is this ironic, or is he trying to get arrested? That's what I want you to wonder. If you are, having fun composing gag emails, that's great. The more these fucking fascists focus on me, the less they're actually getting done. Get involved in anti-fascism. We are living under Weimar conditions, and anti-fascism is the motherfucking solution. Okay? If you have wondered while you were sitting in school, man, what would I have done in the years leading up to World War II? What would I have done when the Nazis started coming for queer people and coming for Jewish people? Whatever the fuck you're doing right now is what you would have done. But it's not too late to get up off your ass and do some motherfucking anti-fascism, unless you're so fucking tiny that you can't measure up to a 5-foot dude with no balls. Join me on the streets, motherfuckers. May the wind always be in your sails, and may your enemies tremble at the sight of you.
Absolutely. Wow, that was a very pirate statement there. I love it. Love it. Again, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Político with Juan Collado Díaz. If you're looking to learn more about the queer activist community, you are more than welcome to visit our website at politicopod.com, where all the show notes will be available, and Leif's personal website will also be there. So if you're interested, again, that's politicopod.com. You can also visit us on Instagram and leave a comment on all of our posts or talk to us directly there. As always, Político with Juan Collado Díaz is a Spotify original from Anchor.fm and Chuck Norris approved. Right, Chuck?
Chuck Norris approved.